What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Stout Out Show, your one-stop shop for all things bets, breakdowns, and predictions. On deck for today's show, we got UFC Fight Night 111 as Gabriel Bonfim looks to take on Randy Brown on a welterweight scrap. But before we get to that, let's head right into the prelims. All right, first one up, we got Jackson Moose McVey taking on Robert Valentin. McVey is a slight underdog at 125, and Valentin's a minus 150 favorite. If I didn't say this before, it's taking place in the middleweight division. Okay, so let's get down to it. So McVey is 0-1 in the UFC, but I feel like that you got to really pay attention to that submission loss against Bruno Ferreira that happened in July. He didn't have a full camp. His first fight before that got canceled. So, it just I picked him to win that fight, but again, experience is a lot. He's still really young. He's only 26. He's got a lot of room to improve. But going into this fight, he obviously has a full camp. He's 6'4", 77-inch reach advantage. Prior to getting into the UFC, all 6 of his wins, not only was he undefeated, but they were all 6 finishes, and he split them up. So like 3 were TKO KOs and 3 were submissions. So I'm pretty still high on Moose McVey. I think he's going to take this one. Valentin, on the other hand, he's 0-3. He just lost to Atiba Gautier that happened in July. I think it was a TKO loss. Valentin's on a 3-fight losing streak. The ride for him's kind of coming to the end. If he loses this one, I got no doubt that he's getting cut. The thing with Valentin, though, is he is a ground guy. A lot of his wins are coming via submission. So, if he's looking at the playbook, he's like, hey, listen, I got the UFC experience. I think I can get McVey to the ground, and I think I can get him out of there. This fight kind of hinges on basically, can McVey use his length and his height to keep Valentin at distance? Valentin's going to want to close the distance, get in clinch range, and try to take McVey to the ground and work that submission. I think McVey is going to take this one. I think McVey is going to get him out of there. I think McVey has the power enough to kind of shut Valentin's lights off. Valentin definitely has TKO losses too. I think he's a bit chinny as well. I think he actually, he, like I said, he just lost his recent fight via TKO. Anyway, my money is on McVey. I'm going to say not straight up round 1 finish, but I would say mid round 2, if he goes by the bell, late round 1 TKO victory. So my money is going to be on Jackson McVey getting the win for this one. All right, next up we have going to be Miles John taking on Daniel Marcos. That's going to be in the bantamweight division. All right, this is a pickup fight straight up. I haven't seen the line move too much for this one. Miles Johns is 7-4-1 in the UFC. He's just coming off a split decision loss to Yan Massimento. He has a 2-fight losing streak. His big thing is he's wrestled first. Very rarely big wrestling fundamentals. But he does have a lot, he's got some good power in his hands. His striking's still got a lot to be, yearned for. Still doing some improvements in that department. But, again, when you can get fighters to the ground, you can kind of grind out decisions. That's kind of in the back of the wheelhouse. I get that, people want to see exciting fights, but he's literally trying to keep his spot in the UFC. His Achilles heel, I'd like to say, he's been finished everywhere. He's, obviously decision losses, and he's been submitted, and he's been knocked out. So, if Marcos wants to, obviously Marcos was a big regional guy, regional bantamweight champion before coming to the UFC. So I know he's got hands, but he's gonna want to keep the fight standing. Marcos, unfortunately, he's coming off unanimous decision loss to Montel Jackson. That happened in May of this year. Like I said, 8 of his wins are coming by TKO, KO. Daniel Marcos has got some hands. He can definitely put you to sleep if given the opportunity. Prior to coming into the UFC, he was on a 6-fight win streak. Now, again, I know that's not against UFC caliber fighters, but still, though, he's got a lot of momentum headed into there. For me, and he's 5-1-1 in the UFC. So again, he's got some talent. I don't know, I think Miles, the reason why it's a pick-up, I think Miles Johns definitely has the tools to take it to the ground and kind of, dictate the fight where he wants to go. But I'm going to go with Marcos on this one. I think, obviously Johns wants to keep the fight measured and use his wrestling to his advantage, kind of manage distance and frustrate Marcos. But, Marcos, on the other hand, he's going to have that forward pressure, keep his foot on the gas, and want to, get shots off early and often, especially, to put Johns away. So I'm going to say Daniel Marcos, but I think this finish is going to come later in the fight. I think it's going to come probably, I would say, late round 3. But, yeah, I'm going Daniel Marcos for the finish on that one. All right, next up we have is going to be Tecia Pennington taking on Denise Gomes. All right, Pennington is 11-7 in the UFC. She's the plus 175 underdog. Gomes is the minus 210 favorite. Like I said, Pennington's coming off of unanimous decision win against Luana Pinheiro that happened in May. For a woman who literally just grinds out decisions her whole career, I think she has one KO win and one sub win. Every other win that she has is decision. She is a big, let's keep the person on the ground, let's grind out the decision, let's kind of go for submission attempts, let's go, very heavy ground and pound. Not the most exciting fighter in the world to watch, but what are you going to do? Another plus on her though is she's got the cardio to take it all 3 or 5 rounds. She's really put in the work, really put in the time to make sure that she can last all 3 rounds. Physically, compared to Denise Gomes, she's a little smaller. She's only 5'1". Her reach is about 60 inches. She's got a pretty good takedown defense too, which I like. But again, it's just the most. If there was a fast forward button, I probably would hit that with this fight. But hey, I'm hoping Gomes. Gomes on the other hand, she's coming off a TKO win against Elise Reed. Actually, that was the performance of the night. Gomes has got some heavy hands, man. She lands about 4.5 significant strikes a minute. She's got 50% accuracy. 64% of her wins are gonna, come in by way of TKO KO. She can definitely finish the fight if she wants to. Do I think she's gonna finish against Pennington? No, I think she's gonna. I think she's going to out-volume strike her pretty much. I think this fight's going to go into the, obviously it's going to go the distance, but I think she's just going to outstrike Pennington early and often. And just, Pennington's going to try very, very hard to get Gomes to the ground. I don't think that's going to work. It's pretty much going to be, does Denise Gomes want to turn this into a brawl, whereas, Tecia Pennington wants to keep this as like a chess match, tactical fight in terms of, kind of dictate pace, kind of dictate where the fight wants to go. But, yes, so Stout Out, we're going with Denise Gomes for the win. Again, minus 210 favorite, but I do think that she's going to go, goes the distance and get the W. All right, next up is going to be the heavyweights. Josh Hokit taking on Max Gimenis. All right, for those who are not familiar with Josh Hokit, he loves to cut a promo, and if you haven't seen that one, I suggest you go on YouTube and check it out. He had a lot to say after his TKO and against Max Gimenis. Kind of Colby Covington-esque, if you will. Anyway, super athletic dude. For those who aren't familiar with him, 2-sport collegiate athlete. He played football and he wrestled at Fresno State. Riding a 6-fight win streak coming into this fight. He's 6'1", so he's a little smaller for the heavyweight division, but his athleticism really makes up for it too. The cool thing I liked about Hokit is, though, that half his wins are coming by submission too. So if he gets on the ground, he welcomes it, and that's what he's going to need against Max Gimenis. Gimenis is actually kind of from my neck of the woods. He's making his UFC debut. He did Shogun Fights, which is a promotion out of Maryland. I don't know if John Rollo has anything to do with that, but he's the head coach at Ground Control. If he's seen him, he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast a bunch too. Big heavyweight dude, very scary black belt. So shout out John Rollo if you're watching this. Gimenis is riding a 4-fight win streak again, but that's all regional opponents. He's really making the jump to UFC caliber fighters. He's got that strong BJJ/judo base. He's 6-1. His only loss has been via TKO. So people, if Hokit can find his chin, he can definitely turn the lights out. I think Gimenis is going to try to survive the storm early and often. I think Hokit's going to, try to smell blood in the water and knock him out of there early. Hokit's got that explosion. He's got powerful hands. If you ever looked on YouTube, you can actually see Gimenis. He's actually fought some guys in not regional, but BJJ grappling matches. So he's definitely got the chops to keep it on the ground. I believe not a lot, but I think he's got some good amount of submission wins too. I'm going to go with Hokit though. He's really the odds-on favorite. I think Hokit's going to find his chin and turn the lights out. I think it's not even going to go past the first round. I'm saying round 1, TKO, Hokit all the way, but, we'll see. But again, my money, Hokit 100%. All right, next up, we have Mayra Silva taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti in the women's bantamweight division. Silva's a plus 215 underdog, while Cavalcanti's a minus 265 favorite. Mayra Silva's following some tough times, man. She's 6-5-2 in the UFC. She just lost to Jasmine Jasudavicius in February. I actually bet on Bueno Silva to win that one. I wish I could throw it back into the DeLorean and get my money back. That was a horrible bet. But win some, you lose some. Like I said, she's riding a 3-fight win streak and a no contest against, I think that was against Holly Holm. She fights orthodox. It's no stranger. She loves the submission game. She loves throwing up submissions, either arm bars or triangles off her back. I think she only has one KO win to her, to her record. But again, if you're vulnerable and you leave openings, especially on the ground, she's going to find them and tap you out. The thing about Silva, she's moved back and forth between bantamweight and flyweight. She kind of not always, but she's changed divisions a couple of times. Like I said, she has 7 submission wins, but I think her time is kind of past. She was at one point in time in that championship caliber talk. She she could fight for the belt, but I just think that's literally taking a back seat. Cavalcanti, on the other hand, she's 4-0 in the UFC. She just had a unanimous decision against Julia Avila. She's on a 7-fight win streak, and she's never been finished. I mean, she's got a really, really big upside. To be honest, I'm surprised that the odds aren't a little bit more in her favor. She's got 0 submission wins to her victory. I think she's going to obviously want to keep the fight standing, keep the fight in the pocket. Do I think this fight's going to get finished? No. I mean, Cavalcanti's only gotten, out of her 9 wins, I think 3 of them are only been KOs. So I think it's going to go pretty much the distance, but I still think, Cavalcanti's going to come out on top. Cavalcanti's going to have to maintain her range, sprawl early and often, stay off the ground. Again, Bueno Silva, she's going to force entries, force the clinch, kind of throw those knees in there and kind of work on getting you to the ground so she can get that submission. I just don't think that's happening with a fighter of Cavalcanti's caliber. I think she's too good for that. I think Cavalcanti walks away with it. So Cavalcanti goes the distance, unanimous decision win. All right, next up we got the bantamweights. Adrian Yanez taking on Cristian Quinonez. All right. Yanez is a minus 220 favorite, while Quinonez is a plus 180 underdog. If you look at both of these guys, they are literally like mirror images of fighting styles. Yanez is 7-3 in the UFC. He's coming off a split decision loss to Daniel Marcos. That happened in December of last year. He's 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He's never been submitted, but I know he's primarily a BJJ guy, but he really uses his boxing and his striking to his advantage. I think his 64% wins are via TKO, KO. That's like 11 out of 17. But he likes to put the pressure on early and often. If he kind of goes to the later rounds, or if his opponents kind of drag him into deep waters, I think that's his path to victory kind of narrows. He doesn't show really, really good strength in the later rounds, kind of gets winded early. But again, he's shown that he can turn the lights out of his opponents. Quinonez, on the other hand, he just is coming off a sub-loss to Hani Barcelos. That happened in February. He's riding a 2-fight win streak. I see, if he, the bantamweight division is kind of a murderer's row. It's very, very stacked. So if Quinonez loses this one, I can definitely see him getting cut from the UFC. He's got some good finishes. 56% of his wins are by TKO, KO. So he's definitely got some dangerous stand-up. He doesn't rely purely on submissions, so he can kind of take the fight where it wants to go. But again, two of his recent losses, which were in a row, were by submission. Kyung Ho Kang got him in the first round, and Hani Barcelos got him in the third round, both with submissions. You would think that if Yanez read the scouting report, like, hey, man, this guy's vulnerable there. Let's get him, to the ground. Let's try to use what we got to our advantage, which is our BJJ. That's where he's going to try to take the fight. Do I think Yanez is going to do that? I think he's like, dude, screw that. I got hands. I know I can, smoke this dude on the feet. Let's go in for war. But X factor being, if Yanez controls the distance, picks his counters and maintains head movement, he can outclass Quinonez on the feet. Show feints pretty well. Really, sit down on his punches, go in and out of the pocket. Quinonez is going to obviously look to close the gap and, throw heavy volume punches and try to, keep it off the feet. But I'm going to say Yanez is going to finish this one. I think Yanez gets the victory. I think that he's going to finish this one by TKO, but I think it's not going to happen until the later round. I believe it's probably going to happen like round 3, I would say. But yeah, I think Yanez is going to walk away with this one. Next up, we got the featured prelim of Hyder Amil taking on Jamall Emmers in a featherweight bout. Amil is a -140 favorite, while Emmers is a +120 underdog. Amil is 4-1 in the UFC. He's just coming off a KO loss to Jose Delgado that happened in the summer. But he had some momentum coming into this fight. He was on a 4-fight win streak. He loves that switch stance style. Can go orthodox or southpaw. Definitely has some good multiple solid KOs in the UFC. He likes to push the action, loves his foot on the gas pedal, and has that forward momentum that he likes to keep as well. Lands about 6 significant strikes a minute. I feel he's not, if people drag him into BJJ/wrestling scenarios, it does kind of give him some risk that he doesn't like that. But I don't see Emmers really doing that, to be honest. If an opponent catches him early enough, especially in round 1 in the opening minutes, to kind of disrupt his rhythm, that can lead a path to downhill and him taking a loss. But Emmers is also coming off a TKO win against Gabriel Miranda. That happened in March. But the thing with Emmers is, he's 4-4 in the UFC, but he is yet to find his wave, meaning that he doesn't get on a streak. Like, he'll win one, lose one, win one, lose one. So it's super, super frustrating and hard to bet on. He hasn't really found one pathway to win. He kind of is all over the place. And he's been finished a various amount of ways too. So he's lost via decision. He's lost via TKO, KO. He's lost via, submission. I kind of, if I was more and more confident on him, if you saw him putting on a couple streaks, a couple hot hands, then I'd bet on him. But I just don't see him really, like, he doesn't have the advantage, to me in any one department that Amil can't get him in. So, I would like to see, Amil probably, keep the fight standing, keep it a little longer. I could see him get that decisive win via decision, especially if he's more accurate with his strikes. But again, if Emmers overwhelms him and kind of disrupts his rhythm, like I said earlier, and, and forces him to engage in those close quarter battles in the pocket, then I can see Emmers coming up with the victory. So this one is kind of a tough one to go to the side, but I'm going to stick with the favorite. I think Amil gets the victory. I think that Emmers is I think he's too inconsistent, and I think he shows his chin a little bit too much. So I'm going to say second round TKO, but I'm going to say Hyder Amil gets the victory for that one. Hey, everybody, just taking a quick break from the video to say if you like what you're seeing, like what you're hearing, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how you're doing with the picks in the comment section, and don't forget to share the video. So, again, look forward to seeing and hearing from you in the future, and on to the main card. All right, later. All right, guys, it is time for the main card, and kicking things off is going to be Cristian Leroy Duncan taking on Marco Tulio in the middleweight division. Duncan is a +165 underdog, while Tulio is a -195 favorite. All right, Cristian Leroy Duncan, he's 5-2 in the UFC, and he's coming off that solid KO win against Eric Anders that happened in August. Duncan's on a little bit of a hot streak, man. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He's never been knocked out before. Very, very good striking. Very good arsenal when it comes to like highlight level spinning back fists or spinning elbows. Very good size, very good reach. He's about 6'1", 6 foot. Likes to move forward, likes to keep good pressure. Not looking to take the fight to the ground that much. He wants to keep it standing, wants to keep it at range. Like I said, he's really, really making a push to that next level in terms of like UFC rankings. Marco Tulio, on the other hand, he's just coming off a TKO win against Tresean Gore that also happened in April. He's riding a 3-fight win streak, so this one was definitely circled on my bingo card as one to watch for. I think it's going to be a lot of excitement. I think we're getting a finish in this one too. I don't even think this is going to smell a decision. But Tulio, 10 of his 14 wins are coming by TKO KO. He's obviously looking for the knockout. Things that are similar for these guys is both of them really struggle against the takedown. They're not really big wrestling or ground control tacticians, so I don't really think they're going to look to go take each other down either. I think they're both going to look to stand in the pocket and see who comes out tougher. The big thing with finishing-oriented strikers, obviously both goes for Duncan and for Tulio, is that, they can kind of, be predictable in the fact that if they don't use feints and if they come forward early and often, that they can get countered pretty easily if they leave themselves open. I think Tulio is going to look to make this fight into a brawl and look, kind of take it that way. So I'm predicting Tulio is going to get the finish. I think he's going to get the finish in around round 2. He's going to look to close that gap and really, really, really pressure Christian Leroy Duncan early, and kind of disrupt Christian Leroy's kind of disrupt his rhythm. He's going to control the range. He's going to control the engagement. So again, I like Tulio to get this one done in round 2. All right, next up we got Ricky Simon taking on Hani Barcelos in the bantamweight division. Ricky Simon is the -170 favorite, while Barcelos is the +140 dog. So Ricky Simon, he's 10-5 in the UFC. Very, very heavy wrestler, wrestling oriented, loves to take the fight to the ground, likes to keep it there, dictates the pace. He's got a very good background in wrestling. Just is coming off a unanimous decision win against Cameron Smotherin that happened in June of this year. His style kind of, lends itself to I like to call it bully UFC fighting. Impose your will, take the guy to the ground and make him work to get up. It's not, hey, I'm not going to look to, submit you as more or less to, I'm going to control you on the ground and just beat the ever-living shit out of you. He's a smaller guy. He's 5'6". He's got a 69-inch reach. He did get he has been knocked out. One was by Song Yudong, got a TKO loss there. But, like I said, but that was in the 5th round, But I think he's kind of matured in the fact that, hey, I know where my bread and butter is. If I can dictate the pace and I can impose my will via wrestling, that's where I'm going to take it. And he definitely's got the cardio for it. He can show he's shown that he can go all 3 rounds, really not looking as tired as he is. Barcelos, on the other hand, dude, he fraud checked pretty much Peyton Talbot. I picked Peyton Talbot. I thought Peyton Talbot was going to walk right through him. Barcelos really showed me who he was, dude. Great takedown D, kept Peyton Talbot at distance and, hit him with a couple good shots and, showed what a UFC veteran was all about pretty much. He just won against Cody Garbrandt. That happened in June. My thing with that one is I don't think Barcelos won as so much as Cody Garbrandt lost, if that makes sense. So Cody Garbrandt, I thought he won round 2. I thought he was just if he would have kept his same tempo and his same game plan up for round 3, I think he would have won that one. But I don't know. I think Cody Garbrandt just got in his own way pretty much, and he could have beat Barcelos. But anyway, Barcelos is a little bit older. He's kind of, he likes to keep fight. He's a big transition guy. His roots are in BJJ, but he's a little older these days. His wrestling isn't as good as Simon's, in my opinion. I think he's got maybe a little bit better ground game in terms of jiu-jitsu, but I just think Simon's wrestling can just, outmatch that any day. I don't really see Simon getting caught in anything that Barcelos tries to throw. The thing with Barcelos is he has been KO'd as well, just like Simon. He does have different avenues of losses, but, he's going to be looking for that submission. But I think this fight's going to go the distance. I think Simon's going to control the pace and definitely grind out a win. So I think Simon's going to be, winner overall, goes the distance. Again, this fight is definitely going to hinge, like I said, on grappling tempo. Can Simon dictate it to the ground, and or less can Barcelos kind of catch Simon in transitions, take his back, and kind of get a scrambling offense going. But like I said, Simon for the win, unanimous decision. All right, next fight is going to be Chris Padilla taking on the older brother of the main event, Ishmael Bonfim, in a lightweight bout. All right, Chris Taco Padilla is a +165 underdog, while Israel Bonfim is a -195 dog. Padilla is 3-0 in the UFC. He just is coming off that split decision win against Jai Herbert in March. He's on a hot streak, man. He's on a 6-fight win streak. Got pretty good volume accuracy and significant strikes, sitting around about 4. His accuracy is about 51%. Can take a little bit various pathways to victory. He can get the knockout or he can get the submission. That's kind of Bonfim's, Achilles heel, if it will. I think 4 of his 5 defeats are by submission. So hopefully Padilla's reading the game, watching the game film, watching tape. Hey, if I can take it to the ground, I think I can out grapple Bonfim. He's a little smaller than Bonfim. He sits at 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. Only has 3 wins by decision, but some of his losses do come by submission. I think 2 of his 6 losses are by submission. But I think he's got enough tools to make sure that he doesn't get caught. I really do. I'm really high on Padilla on this one. Like I said, Bonfim is coming off that TKO loss to Nazim Sadikov that happened in February. He's about an inch shorter than Padilla. He's about 5'8". But he lands a pretty good number of significant strikes. He lands about 5 to Padilla's 4. And his accuracy sits somewhere around like 55 to 60%. Fights orthodox, but he can mix things up, by pressuring and then transitioning to takedowns. He's not predictable in that sense. He really works to switch things up and become unpredictable when it comes to the takedown department. I'm going to say Padilla wins this one. I think he's going to get the submission. I think he's a little bit better grappler in ground in terms of that. So I'm going to say Padilla round 2 submission. I wouldn't stay away. I'd stay away from the parlay on this one. I can also see the fight going on decision for Padilla, but if you want to, if you're willing to risk it, I'd say Padilla by submission. But I would just safe money is going to say Padilla by decision. All right, next fight we got Muslim Salikov versus Uros Madik. Salikov is a highlight level machine. Okay, he's got that Sanda background. He's the first non-Chinese fighter to win the King of Sanda. If you guys haven't seen that, Sanda's that kind of, for lack of a better word, that martial arts, very kicking oriented. Salikov has got more often than not a lot of TKOs and KOs via backspinning wheel kicks or high kicks. He's really good at hiding it. People don't see where it's coming from. He can camouflage it well with strikes. He's got some solid technique. He's coming off that KO win against Carlos Leal that happened in July. He's 9-4 in the summer. The big thing that I see, if there's a knock on Salikov is that if his opponents can close the different distance and kind of stay away from his kicks, meaning that if they get the clinch or they take him down, they can kind of neutralize him. I mean, that's where his base is. Especially, but he's, at 170, he's strong, but I don't think he's wrestling strong, if that makes any sense. I think he can get taken down pretty easily. I don't think he's really that good off his back, but, again, if taking him down is one thing, but staying away from those kicks is a whole other thing. Lastly, he's a little older. He's 42 in the game. I think his ride might be slowing down. It might be coming to an end. Madik, on the other hand, he's coming off a KO win against Gilbert Urbina. If you didn't see that one, check that out on YouTube. Madik throws this left hand, come out of nowhere, and just catches Urbina and just throws him into hyperspace and just drops that fool. Madik's on a 4-fight winning streak. Almost all of his wins are coming by finish, whether it be KO or submission, but he's kind of a badass. He's 6'1" with a 71-inch reach. Fights southpaw, super aggressive, likes to put the pace on you early and often. He's coming in, fast and furious. My thing is, the only I see the knock on him. I don't know if he's going to be stronger at welterweight than he was at lightweight. He's moving up in weight class. But the thing that I see, the X factor coming into this is, the Salikov's precision, outlast Madik's early storm. If Salikov can keep the fight at range and keep the fight at distance long enough to unload one of those highlight level kicks, he's going to catch Madik pretty good. I just think Madik's going to see that coming. I think Madik's going to plan for that. I think Madik's going to get in pretty good and just land a solid 1-2 and find his chin. Salikov has been knocked out before, but I think Madik's got the better fighter IQ. So I'm going to go Uros Madik for the finish on this one. I'm going to say round 2 TKO KO. I don't see this fight going to the ground at all. I don't see this fight going to decision at all. These guys are coming for blood. I think this is going to be a good fight. So, Madik all the way. All right, next up we have Matt Schnell taking on Joseph Morales in the flyweight division. Matt Schnell is a plus 215 underdog, taking on Joseph Morales, who's a minus 265 favorite. Morales is your Ultimate Fighter winner for last season. That was Chael Sonnen's and DC's season. I like, I mean, so Schnell's coming off a unanimous decision to Jimmy Flick. I'm a big fan of Schnell. I've been, big fan of his early and often. He's just, my thing with Matt Schnell, he's just super, super inconsistent. He'll win one, lose one, lose one, win one. He hasn't really had a good streak. He gets frustrated if he loses. He retired 2 fights ago, but then he unretired and came back and beat Jimmy Flick. I actually won money on that one. I was really pumped on that one because I knew he was gonna. He just has at that point had a better ground IQ than Jimmy Flick. This one, I think Morales has his number in terms of the ground. I think Morales is a little bit above him on the ground in terms of submissions. Schnell has lost in a various amount of ways. He's been submitted. He's been KO'd. He's a little older. I don't think, he's not looking for the belt anytime soon. He's a little smaller than Morales. He's about 5'8" with a 70, 72-inch reach advantage. The good thing for Schnell is he's got experience, man. Schnell's seen a lot. He hasn't fought the top level of competition, but, he's fought, middle-of-the-road guys, and he's been in some wars, man. He's got cardio for days. He can definitely last all 3 rounds, and, he lands a couple good strikes, but his strikes are that so that he can take you to the ground. He's not trying to knock KO you or TKO. He knows his bread and butter is jiu-jitsu, and he knows that, he wants to submit you in terms of that way. I think he's only got 2 wins via TKO, if I'm not mistaken. Morales, on the other hand, he's 2. He had a little bit of time in the UFC and then took a break, and now he's back. He's coming off that submission win against Alidi Idris that happened in August, but he's on a 4-fight win streak, which I like. Very high submission IQ and finish threats. Multiple submission wins at his weight class. Really, really relies heavily on ground control and submission threats. I think that he's going to find Schnell's, chink in his armor in terms of, Schnell can scramble with the best of them, but I think if Morales makes it more of a chess match and more of like a slower pace, okay, let's get my rhythm on the ground and look for openings and looks to threaten submissions, I think that's where he's got him all day. So I'm going to say Morales is going to get this one via, I don't actually know. I think I'm going to say Morales is going to get it, but I think it's going to go to the distance. I think Schnell's going to, I don't think he's going to get tapped out by Morales, but I think he's going to get, whether it comes to, control time or just a little bit more volume striking, I don't think he's going to hold in there with Morales too well. In the main event, we got Gabriel Bonfim, number 14 ranked, taking on Randy Brown in the welterweight division. Bonfim is a minus 180 favorite to Randy Brown's 150 underdog. All right, Bonfim is 6-1 in the UFC. He's coming off that split decision win against Stephen Thompson, in which Stephen Thompson, I really believe if he was in his prime and kind of turned back the clock, he would have won that fight. He really showed resurgence at the end of the fight. Kept it, people were really behind Stephen Thompson, including me. I really thought he could have won that if he was in his prime. But anyway, Bonfim is on a 3-fight win streak. He leans heavily towards grappling. He is a big submission specialist. He makes no bones about it. I think he only has his, 3 out of his 18 wins are coming by TKO, KO. He's really good in transitions, shows really good composure, and he's able to scramble and lock up submissions rather than just, relying on his brute strength, which is a big, which is pretty favorable. His scheme is pretty predictable, though. Hey, let me go take you down. Let me try to get the submissions. I think if Randy Brown is reading the game, watching game tape and watching the film, he can plan for it. Randy Brown, conversely, he's got really, really good takedown defense at 73%. Not to mention, Randy Brown's coming off a KO win of Nicholas Dalby. The only loss in Bonfim's UFC career is to Nicholas Dalby. So if we want to do a little fighter math, that's why the odds are so the way they are. Hey, if Dalby can knock out Bonfim, then, if Dalby can knock out Bonfim and Brown can knock out Dalby, hey, there's no reason why we can't see that Brown take the underdog up win against Bonfim. Randy Brown's a little taller. He's 6'3", and his reach is a little bit longer. He's been fighting in the UFC for pretty much a decade. He has seen the who's who of the welterweight division. He's got a lot of good experience. The big knock on him, he's got that, he leaves his lead leg exposed. He's got that low leg kick vulnerability. Against Wellington Thurman, his leg got ate up by those low calf kicks. Like I said, his takedown defense is around 73%. KO to KO ratio, he's only getting those wins via 40% of the time. So I don't think this fight is going to see a finish in terms of standing up. I think if Bonfim gets it done, he's going to get it done on the ground as per usual. I think this fight's going to go the distance. I could see Gabriel Bonfim outlasting Randy Brown for the full 5. Dark Horse says that Bonfim is able to get get the submission, but later in the fight, around round 4, round 5. But that's where my money is going on. It's going to be Bonfim by decision. I think it goes the full 5 rounds, but Bonfim gets the win, moves up in the rankings. No disrespect to Randy Brown, but I think just Bonfim's got more momentum behind him. Bonfim's the better grappler and the better submission specialist. So that concludes the main card for the day. See you guys next time with the next Stout Out next week. All right, see you.